Here we are back with part 2. Sorry we had to cut it, but because of certain issues I've been having with this recording, we had to cut into part 2. But anyway, let's continue on with the ranking. Coming in at number 7 is Daario, portrayed by Benicio del Toro. Now, interesting fact, this is one of Benicio del Toro's his first acting roles before he became such a big movie star, from what I've been told. And he is the youngest actor to betray a Bond henchman. I think he was 24 at the time. Now, on the surface, Dario doesn't look like stand out as a what you would come to expect from a Bond henchman, but in many ways that's what I like about him. He doesn't look like a traditional Bond henchman. On the surface, Del Toro is basically like this gangbanger who should be at the lower level of the criminal operations, but because he was so loyal to Sanchez during the early days, Sanchez has kept him around and he's managed to rise up in the ranks to become essentially almost the number 2 / protege henchman of the series. So that's what he is. And he does get knocked out easily. So but he is a capable fighter, even though he does get knocked out easily. And the way how he takes out his signature knife is also very interesting too. Overall, and his death, just like in the movie itself, is very violent. And you have to have that. He's also clearly a bit of a psychopath, or what I like to consider the whole Dario character is a teenager who's become this big shot mobster, street gangster, but he has no idea just how high in the organization he is, and doesn't really act his age. Again, that's how I interpret the character. Overall, because he's so different, he does give you a bit of fresh air for Bond henchman-wise, and I feel that is great, and I will take that any day to at least have different Bond henchmen. Speaking of different Bond henchmen, coming at number 6, we have a tie between T.H. and Baron Samedi. Baron Samedi was portrayed by Jeffrey Holder, and T.H. Johnson was portrayed by Julius Harris. Now, Live and Let Die is one of those films in the series where the henchman, in my opinion, does outshine the main villain. Although we'll get to a real classic example of that later on the list. Now, I like these both very much, and I couldn't put myself to put one in front of the other. They both don't deserve to be on honorable mention, but they do deserve to be on the list. So I decided, you know what? Let's pair the two. So what are these henchmen? First off, T.H. is basically arguably the real henchman of the movie, and his gimmick is that metal claw. Baron Samedi is basically the number 2 guy, and basically dresses up like Baron Samedi, like this voodoo. Now, of course, we go through the film, we question whether the voodoo really exists. Of course, at the end of the movie, voodoo you understand when you see the movie. Basically, I just love these two so much, and they're both so different. This henchman is far more theatrical and performing wise, which makes sense for Jeffrey, who is a stage performer. He's worked on Broadway, he's done those productions, and I have absolute respect and admiration for this man's career. This guy is definitely a henchman, and I think he was the second henchman in the series. At the end of the film, sometimes Bond would battle the henchman at the end. This was the second time we've had that. The real person who really kicked off that arguably were Rosa Klebb, and also Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, definitely. Overall, these are just so different. They are just so unique. And I just do like how the actors portray them as T.H. is this tough, menacing guy, and this guy is just clearly a little bit off his rocker, almost a gentleman. And these two just own the roles they play, and that's all you can expect. That's all you want. Coming in at number 5, we crown it to arguably the series' first ever henchman, and that is Red Grant, portrayed by Robert Shaw. Now, he's not what you come to mind for a proper henchman, but he was definitely the first. But he first henchman, and he was the first, arguably anti-Bond. That character that is essentially a darker reflection of 007. Red Grant here is just pretty much a henchman, an assassin, an assassin whose gimmick is that he has a wire that he would take out of his watch and strangle his victims. He's also a professional killer. He's capable of hand-to-hand fight. He can handle firearms, and I like how he's used in the film as well. And the fight between him and Sean Connery's Bond on the train is one of the most iconic things ever to hit the series. Overall, I just absolutely like the idea that he's the first anti-Bond. And if you can see it in many ways, the idea of having a Bond, like, look at Alec Trevelyan and Raul Silva. I mean, you can agree that they do have some, at least physical similarities with Red Grant. There's the fact they have blonde hair, and they're clearly, like, sort of agent-type characters. But he also was the first henchman in the series, like, this sort of, if in a series, if you had blonde hair and you were Russian, you were automatically the henchman bad guy of the film. Of course, that was until Daniel Craig was cast in the role of 007. Overall, he was the first henchman, but for the first proper henchman, we'll come to later. But at number 4, we have Mayday, portrayed by Grace Jones. View to a Kill has one of the most bizarre casting choices for their villains, and the henchman, or in this case, henchwoman, was definitely a unique casting choice. Now, Mayday is basically what you would expect for the male henchman to be the super, build and very strong. It stands out for a woman, dye her skin black, not being racist, you get Mayday. Overall, Mayday is just so unique of a character. She just stands out. But also is the second time where the henchman or a hench character will team up with the series with Bond when the boss betrays them and stabs them in the back. Again, she is just so classic, and her death, how she goes out, is truly spectacular. Overall, Grace Jones just portrays her as menacing, and that stare she gives you, and the fact she can handle herself. That's really all I can say. And the reason I put her above Red Grant is because she does possess a more traditional henchman type role. What the series would be known for. Coming in at number 3, Oddjob. I might get killed for this, as for many, Oddjob either has to take the number 1 or number 2 spot. Well, hear me out. Yes, Oddjob, portrayed by the great Harold Sakata, whose career, overall life is so extraordinary. You gotta research him and at least dig into his background. It's truly fantastic. And yeah, so this is really where the classic henchman really came from. The strong, silent type, having a gimmick. For this case, it's having a top hat that he uses as a weapon with the razor hit, at that bit. You'd think that sounds stupid, but for some reason, Harold makes it work. He's silent, he rarely speaks, shouts a few maybe phrases here and there, and the fact he's willing to die for his boss just shows how much loyalty Oddjob has. I like the fact that he is the first proper henchman. Now, like I said, Red Grant was the first, but this is truly where the classic version of a henchman really came into being. Like I said, for all we know, Goldfinger the movies just set the gold standard for everything you expect in a Bond film. Now, the reason I have him at number 3 is purely based on taste. Now, I feel like the number 1 and 2 spot should be given to either, at least one should be a femme fatale and one should be a henchman. So with that said, I feel that another henchman really nails the number 1 spot. But before we get to him, let's get to our number 2, and that is Xenia Onatop, portrayed by Famik Jensen. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Again, I'm sorry if I do not pronounce these names right. Overall, this is really, in my opinion, the series' best femme fatale. Female henchman goes to this woman. First off, she's crazy, she's hot, and her gimmick, basically, she kills men with her thighs. And the fact that she gets turned on killing people really just shows just how mad she is. And for many, when you see Goldeneye, there is some. For many, they could. These days, they consider the only reason to watch is for this character. Now, I totally disagree. There's more reasons to watch Goldfinger other than this character. But just to see this character for yourself would truly be is truly fantastic. The fact that she's just off a rocker, she's basically, she's just a woman. She's basically an assassin that kills for pleasure and has just literally lost all sense of her marbles. Like I said, she is truly the first proper series femme fatale. No, not the first series femme fatale, correction. The best femme fatale. And it will be a long time before we actually get a character who could actually top her. So that's that. Others that have come after her, even by Elektra, I feel don't really nail the standard she left. Overall, she's just really crazy. But despite being a number 2, and if you are a huge hardcore Bond fan, number 1, and let's be honest, we kind of saw this coming. Number 1, Jaws, portrayed by Richard Kiel. Now, was there ever any doubt? Often considered not just the best Bond henchman, but one of the best henchmen in cinema history. Being super tall, almost at the height of Frankenstein, basically with those metal teeth, being both intimidating and funny. I also like his character, how it portrays, or how it evolves throughout 2 movies. Yeah, this is one of the few henchmen in the series to actually appear in more than 1 movie. He appears in 2, and I like how the portrayals in each of the 2 films are completely different, and that just shows us just how much he can be. How much he can be. Now, people don't like the portrayal of Jaws in the second film, but honest to God, I just feel that Richard Kiel just nails this role. He was born for this role. This is truly the greatest henchman the series has ever had. He is funny, he is threatening, he has a gimmick, and he just really fits in with his Bond era, but he's also one of the few villains that can exist beyond his Bond era. Overall, he's an absolute classic and a beloved addition to the series. And the late Richard Kiel, despite how many great performances he has done, and I know he has done so many great performances, his most starring role and his legacy will be lived throughout Jaws. For the people who have been watching, and if any of them are somehow related to Richard Kiel, I say this with the most humble respect, may he rest in peace. Well, we finally finished the list. Sorry if it's in a part 2 or a bit wonky if I had very bad camera work. For my next video, I want to take a break for the Bond series and get back to my movie review. So hopefully, that should come out some point on the weekend. And until we meet again, enjoy the rest of your day.